The tracks came to my door and stopped. I found them on a Thursday morning in December. Daniel's horse. I knew the shoe pattern, that particular notch on the left rear shoe, the prints coming up from the road, crossing the yard, all the way to the porch step. And then turning back, he had come. He had not knocked. He had stood at my door and ridden home without it. I stood in the cold looking at those tracks for a long time. Then I went inside and made my coffee and did my morning work and told myself it was not significant, and spent the rest of the day proving I was wrong about that. My name is Nadia Koval. I have been on this land since the spring of 1878. When Petro and I came west from Pennsylvania with $40, a Homestead Act filing, and the specific stubbornness of people who have decided that what they want exists somewhere and intend to find it. Petro was from a village in Ukraine that the maps of that time called nothing in particular. I was from a village 2 days' walk from his that had no particular reason to keep either of us. We had met at a church in Philadelphia where I had been working in a garment factory and he had been working at the docks. And we had married in the spring of 1876 and saved for 2 years and come west in 1878 because the Homestead Act offered 160 acres to anyone willing to improve it for 5 years. And Petro had read the act through twice and said, "This is the law of people who want land to have people on it. That is a good law. We should go." We went. The journey from Pennsylvania took 3 weeks by rail and wagon. I had never been west of Pittsburgh. By the time we reached Montana Territory, I understood something about scale that the eastern states do not teach you. That land can be so large and so indifferent that a person either grows to match it or is reduced by it. Petro said the land was not indifferent. He said it was waiting to see what you would do. I thought that was a useful way to think about it. The land was 160 acres of Montana grass and creek. Bottom and ground so stone hard the first summer that the plow broke twice and had to be repaired. With wire and ingenuity and the particular profanity Petro used for serious mechanical problems, which sounded like music to me because I understood only half of it. We built the cabin that first summer. 2 rooms, low-ceilinged, logs chinked in a pattern Petro invented and which sealed better than the neighbor's methods. We broke 40 acres of sod. We planted a kitchen garden. We lost 1 cow to a snake and 1 to something the veterinarian in Billings called a mineral deficiency and which we called bad luck. We kept the other 2. We went into the first winter with enough food to last and barely enough warmth and the knowledge that we had made something from nothing in a single season, which was the most satisfying thing I had experienced in my life to that point. Petro died in the second winter. Pneumonia, fast. The way pneumonia moves when a man has already worn himself thin on frozen ground and not enough food, and the sheer physical cost of building something from nothing in Montana in January. He was 36 years old. He had filed the claim in both our names, which he had done deliberately, because Petro read documents the way he read everything, carefully, with an eye to what might be needed later. What was needed later was that I could keep the claim. A widow could continue under the Homestead Act. I continued. In the 2 years since Petro died, I had learned to run the 160 acres by doing it. Then, by getting better at it, than by understanding it well enough to improve on what we had started. That winter after the funeral, I had lain awake many nights thinking about the 5-year improvement requirement. 1883 was the year I had to show the land office that the claim was being developed. Petro had kept careful records, acreage broken, structures built, crops planted. I kept them the same way, in the same ledger, in my own hand beside his. The ledger was the most important object I owned after the land itself. I also thought, those nights, about what it meant to stay. The first 3 men who approached me about selling arrived within 6 months of Petro's death, which told me something about how the county thought about a widow's resolve. I said no to all of them without deliberation because the no was not a decision. It was a fact, the way the mountains were a fact. You do not deliberate about the mountains. I had 3 cattle now, 2 horses, a kitchen garden that produced more than I needed, and 40 acres of winter wheat that had come in adequately 2 seasons. I had a neighbor to the south named Halvorsen, a Norwegian who had been on his land 11 years and who gave me advice I hadn't asked for, but which was generally sound. I had a neighbor to the north whose name was Daniel Marsh. He had started coming to my door the first winter. February, 3 months after Petro's funeral, the snow thigh-deep and the temperature at the kind of level that makes you understand why sensible animals hibernate. He came on horseback with a length of iron pipe he said he'd borrowed from Petro the previous fall and wanted to return. I took the pipe. I thanked him. He asked if the water line was holding. There had been a freeze that cracked lines all over the county, and I said it was. He said if it broke, I should send word. I said I would. He rode north. I thought about that visit once that evening, standing at the kitchen window watching the last light go. Then I thought about the water line. Which was more useful? He came back in March. He was going to Billings for supplies, and did I need anything? I gave him a list: flour, salt, 2 items. He brought them back the following week and charged me exactly what they cost. That told me something the pipe return had not told me. A man who charges you exactly what a thing costs has decided not to be owed anything. It is a particular kind of statement, and I filed it April, May, June, each time with a reason. A tool borrowed by Petro and returned now. Information about cattle prices. A question about where my east fence line ran because he was surveying his own. The reasons were always real. This was the thing I noticed first about Daniel Marsh. He did not invent pretexts. He came when he had a genuine reason to come, and he could have sent a neighbor boy with the pipe and could have written down the supply list and sent it. But he came himself, and the reasons were real. And I received him each time with the careful courtesy of a woman who understands that the frontier requires good relations with neighbors. I was thinking about the wheat, about the water line, about Petro's tool arrangement in the barn, which I had not altered because altering it felt like erasing. Something. I was not thinking about what Daniel's visits were for. Then came October of the first year, 14 months after Petro died, and the visit that was different. He came on a Tuesday. Not his usual pattern, and he brought nothing. He knocked, and when I opened the door, he said he had been working his north fence and had seen that my barn roof had a section that was going to give before spring. He asked if I would like help with it before the snow. I looked at him. He looked back at me directly, without the sideways quality that men sometimes have when they offer help to a woman alone and expect a particular kind of gratitude. He just looked at me and waited. I said I had been meaning to do it myself. He said he knew. He said he also had 2 good hands and the right lumber, and that roofs were better done with 2 people. I thought about it. I said yes. We spent 2 days on that roof. He worked the way he did everything, without waste, without performance, without the noise some men make when they want you to notice how much they are doing. We talked about the roof, about the winter, about cattle prices, and a herd of elk moving through the north pasture. We did not talk about anything that was not practical. And by the end of the second day, the roof was solid, and I was aware, without examining it, that I had not spent 2 consecutive days that comfortable since Petrodot. He said goodbye and went home. I thought about those 2 days for considerably longer than I thought about the roof. The second year went the same way. Visits, reasons, worked together when I allowed it, which was not often, but more often than the first year. I began to know the sound of his horse on the road before I could see him. I began, and this I noticed and set aside, to have the coffee made on days when he was likely to come. The visits had a quality I found difficult to name. They were not courtship, or at least they did not perform as courtship. There were no flowers, no pointed compliments, no transparent pretexts of the kind that announced themselves. He brought real things and talked about real things and went home. And the texture of his company was simply that of a person who was easy to be around, which is rarer than people who have never been lonely understand, I noticed. In the second year, that he sometimes paused before leaving. A small thing, a moment at the door or the gate where he seemed to be deciding whether to say something else, and then did not say it. I noticed, and I said nothing, and he said nothing, and the moment passed, and we both went back to our work. There were 4 or 5 of these moments over the course of that second year. Each one I put in the same drawer as the coffee I made on Tuesdays and did not examine. The town had opinions. They always do. The settlements around Billings were growing, and a growing community has a great deal of energy available for other people's arrangements. Mrs. Holst, at the dry goods store, mentioned it with the careful indirection of a woman who considers herself tactful. "Your neighbor Marsh comes your way often," she said one afternoon. "He is a very reliable man." I bought my flour and said he was a good neighbor and left without elaborating. Reliable was not the word I would have chosen. Reliable was a word for pipes and water lines. Daniel was something that required a word I had not picked up yet. 3 different men had offered to buy my claim in those 2 years. One was straightforward. One had implied gently that a woman alone couldn't really manage, which I found instructive about him. One had sent a lawyer, which I found efficient. I had said no to all 3 with increasing brevity, and each no had become its own small proof. A proof that I was right to be here, that I did not need what I did not have. This, I came to understand, was where the problem was living. I had spent 2 years proving I didn't need anything I couldn't provide myself. And the proving had been real. I had needed to prove it, for myself more than for anyone. But there is a difference between proving a thing and making it permanently true. And somewhere in the second year, I had stopped proving it and started just doing it. out of habit, and the habit had begun to look like a decision I had never consciously made. Daniel's tracks stopped. At my door on a Thursday in December, I stood in the cold, looking at them, and I thought about why a man rides to a door and does not knock. There were practical reasons. He saw I wasn't home. He remembered something forgotten. He thought better of his errand. I went through those reasons and set each one aside. None of them fit the specific shape of what I was looking at, which was Prince coming all the way to the porch step. A man who wasn't sure he had the right address stops at the gate. A man who remembers something forgotten turns at the road. These Prince came to the porch step. He had known where he was going. He had gone all the way there. And then he had decided he didn't have the right to knock. I went inside and I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee, and I thought about that. For a long time, I thought about what I had been doing with his visits, the courtesy I gave them, careful and warm and precisely calibrated, to say nothing more than that I was glad for a good neighbor. I had held that line for 2 years with the same consistency I gave the fence line, checking it, maintaining it, making sure nothing was getting through. It had not occurred to me to ask what I was keeping out. Petro had stood in the road, outside my father's house in the village, for an entire afternoon before he knocked. My mother told me this at our wedding. She said, "He stood there long enough that I nearly sent someone out to him." She had thought he might need water. But he knocked. He told my father he had come to ask whether Nadia would receive a collar. My father had said yes before Petro finished the sentence, which my mother said was the fastest my father had ever agreed to anything. Petro had knocked. He had been afraid, and he had knocked anyway. I sat at my kitchen table and I thought about that. And then I thought about the 4 or 5 moments at the door in the second year that I had put in the drawer without examining. And I opened the drawer and looked at them. He had been saying something with those pauses. He had been trying to find the question, and each time had decided he didn't have the right to ask it. And I had said nothing each time, which he had taken as a message. The message I had been sending, without knowing I was sending it, that the door was for neighbors. Nothing more. I had been so careful about protecting the land from people who wanted it that I had started protecting myself from people who didn't. That was the mistake. And it had taken horse tracks in the snow on a December morning to show me its shape. I sat at my kitchen table and I thought about what it meant that Daniel had not knocked, and what it meant that I had never once given him reason to believe he should. The next morning, I put on my coat and my burgundy shawl and I saddled my horse and I rode north. I had never done that before. In 2 years of his visits, I had never gone the other direction. He had always come to me, always with his reasons. And I had always waited and received and sent him home. And the arrangement had seemed right, because it had seemed like the right kind of arrangement for neighbors. It was not the right kind of arrangement for what this was. I understood this on the road north. Riding through the December cold with the Rockies white on the western horizon and the particular quality of Montana winter light that makes everything look exact, his ranch came into sight, larger than mine, better established, the barn sound and a fence straight in the way of land that has had 6 years of attention. He was at the north fence when I came up the road. He saw me from a distance and he went still, That particular stillness of his when he was taking something in and deciding what to do with it. And he watched me ride to his gate, and he did not move to meet me, which I respected because he understood that this was mine to do. I stopped at his gate. I said, "You came to my door yesterday." He was quiet a moment. He said, "I did." I said, "You didn't knock." He looked at the fence post between us. He said, "No, I didn't." Single quotes to. He looked up at me. "I have been coming for 2 years," he said, "and you have always been glad to see me and always been ready for me to leave." And I could not tell which one was the real answer. I didn't want to ask the wrong question. I thought about that. Glad to see me and ready for me to leave. He had read it exactly right, both parts of it. And he had held them both without pushing on either one, because he was that kind of man. The kind who waits for the truth, rather than forcing a version of it. For 2 years. He had read me correctly, and I had not known I was being read. I sat on my horse in the cold, and I thought about Petro standing in a road for an afternoon, afraid, and knocking anyway. What is the right question? I said. He looked at me with the directness he always had. He said, "Whether you would let me come for reasons that have nothing to do with pipe or fences or roof timber." The Montana morning held us both. A crow crossed the white sky. His horse moved in the corral, restless in the cold. I got down from my horse. I looped the reins over his gatepost. I said, "I have coffee on the stove." He opened the gate. That was the beginning. Not the end, the beginning, which is different and in some ways harder. Because a beginning requires you to keep going, and a closed door requires nothing at all. We had coffee in his kitchen that morning, which was a warmer room than I had expected, and which had a window facing east that caught the winter light in a way that explained why he had put his table there. We talked for 2 hours about things that were not pipe or fences. And when I rode home that afternoon, I understood something I had been learning for 2 years without knowing. I was in the lesson. A person can be right about what they need and still be wrong about how they're holding it. I had needed the land, and I had needed to prove I could keep it, and I had been right about both. But I had been holding those needs so tightly that I had left no room for anything that arrived differently than I expected. Anything that came through a gate rather than a deed office. Anything that had no filing fee and no legal requirement and no 5-year improvement clause. Just a man with a real reason every time and gray eyes that waited. I have kept the 160 acres. I took full title in 1883, 5 years of improvement satisfied. The land is mine in the way things are yours when you have worked them with your hands and your stubbornness and every cold morning of your life. Daniel's land is north of mine, and we have not merged them. They are separate properties, separately maintained, which is how we wanted it. What is mine is mine. What is his is his. What is ours is built the way good things are built on this land, slowly, with attention to the quality of what goes in, with no shortcuts that look easy and cost you later. Petro would have understood this. He had read the Homestead Act twice and understood that the law was written by people who wanted land to have people on it who would stay. He had stood in a road for an afternoon and then knocked because he understood that the land and the staying both required a particular kind of courage. He had been right about that. You cannot build something worth having in Montana without the courage to show up for it. When it is cold and the ground is stone, and the reasons for leaving are more obvious than the reasons for staying. That is what the land asks of you, and it asks it every single season. And you answer it every single morning when you get up and go out into it again. Daniel had been showing up for 2 years. I had been letting him and not letting him in equal measure. And on a Thursday morning in December, his tracks finally told me what that had cost. I had spent 2 years proving I didn't need anything. I couldn't provide myself. That was true. It remained true. But true and sufficient are not the same word. And I had been using them as if they were. The tracks came to my door and stopped, and I went north to find out why. And the why was the beginning of something I had not let myself expect. The coffee was still hot. He opened the gate. That was enough. That was everything.